I asked 7 of my 7-figure algorithmic trading friends what is one sentence they wish they had heard earlier in their career. Here are 7 sentences that could have got them there 2 times faster. I'm Manir, also known as GoSorg Trades on Twitter, and I also run Unbiased Trading, an agency where you can hire quant developers to backtest and automate your trading. Let's get straight into this. First is a good trading rule should be testable, relatively simple, and understandable. Without those, you'll likely be left with an overfitted rules. Focus on rules that you can easily test and understand. Overall, from all of my experience building any algorithm or backtesting, the more complex it is, the more likely you are to hit curve fitting or overfitting, and that's never going to really translate well into the actual live markets. Now, just as a really brief overview, just in case you're unsure. Overfitting is when you fit your strategy too closely to historical data, where you're pretty much fitting and finding performance just in noise. So it's never going to work on out of sample data, or what that primarily just means unseen data. It's like live data or data you haven't optimized over. So the more rules you apply to a strategy, the more likely you'll actually find that kind of lucky trade sequencing or parameter value or things like that, which are going to lead into overfitting. And then when you actually apply it onto the live markets, it's actually not going to work very well. So this is a super basic kind of sentence, but it actually holds a lot of value in that realistically, simple is better. I know I preach about it way too much, but it's just been the thing I found most useful, so I try and provide that as much as possible. 2, asking the right questions can be the difference between being lost for months or solving your trading problems. This is kind of counterintuitive to some extent, but don't always chase solutions. For the most part, when I've actually asked the right questions, whether that be to someone further ahead of me or to even myself, those have actually led to the biggest breakthroughs in my understanding of my trading problems and then being able to find a solution to it. Also, I would really give this advice that treat solutions as experiments. You're really never going to know if the thing you're going to try is actually going to solve the problem until you test it. So I remember I had a really big block in my mental state for a while because I was scared of implementing a potential solution because I wasn't too sure if that actually was the core issue. And it was a really stupid thing of me to do. It took me about like a month or two to really realize that realistically, I'm never going to know before I implement a solution if it actually is going to solve that problem. So you just need to keep on testing. You need to kind of come up with some sort of systematic way of testing it. For me, that was normally implementing the solution, testing it at least for 10 to maybe 2 weeks, and see how that has actually affected performance, and has it increased performance, has it not really made any change, or has it actually made it worse, and then kind of going from there and iterating through different solutions potentially for that particular problem. 3, there is no substitute for emotional control. Whether algorithmic or discretionary, the only difference is algorithmic traders focus on the portfolio of strategies, not the individual trades. Now, this is a common myth in the algorithmic kind of trading world, is people try and advertise to you that, hey, it's going to remove all emotion. That is just simply not true. If you break, trading, I guess, or even algorithmic trading down into its basic kind of format, there will always be discretion to some extent. It just depends where that discretion is. So for algorithmic traders, such as myself, that is normally going to be in the input area. So what that really means is, what data am I looking over to create that particular strategy? Am I feeding data into a machine learning algorithm? What data am I feeding into it? What parameters am I thinking about when adding to the strategy? That is sort of the discretionary element of things. But even when you're an algorithmic trader, maybe you won't have discretion in the actual individual trades themselves or how the strategy is actually executed. Whereas a discretionary trader, you're still going to have that emotional control not to change that strategy as parameters after 2 weeks of running it. That's a really often easy issue to run into. Is you take a strategy live and it's been working for a month or two, and then for 2 weeks it stops really working and actually has some really big losses. Now, if those losses aren't bigger than what you were expecting historically, you really shouldn't change the strategy at all. It's just potentially a down period during that strategy. But a lot of people will think, hey, oh, this is something I could actually add to fix that. They'll add a new parameter and they slowly just overfit it based on that actual live past experience of when they're going through those losses. So that's just kind of one thing that brings to mind when he told me this sentence, and I could instantly really relate to it. There is no, sadly, substitute, as he mentions, that you'll always need some sort of emotional control in trading. The best way I like to describe it is the kind of time frame of that emotional control. If you're a discretionary trader, you're going to need emotional control in the split-second decisions and the minute decisions, whereas an algorithmic trader, you'll kind of need that more on a weekly, quarterly, and monthly basis of being able to wait for that amount of data so you can actually make educated decisions and not making a rash decision based on a particular bad trade. Four, no strategy is perfect. If you go into trading with that expectation, you'll be searching for a very long time. They all just have their unique pros and cons. I think this sentence kind of does it justice just by itself. It's pretty self explanatory, but as a little note on it, just accept every approach has limitations. I've had a decent amount of calls, whether that be through free webinars or things like that, or even just calls for being interested in working with me. And a lot of them have come into the call with the frame of mind that, hey, I have this strategy, I just want to make it even 10 times better. Could you help me find out what parameters or what things to do to make the strategy even better? And sadly, I can never take on those kind of projects because fundamentally I don't believe in that approach. I really don't think you can just take a strategy and find 5 things you can add to it and then boom, it's going to be an amazing success and you're just going to have one strategy that's going to be trading for the next 10 years. I do think you can make improvements to a strategy, but improvements to such a degree where you're taking very, very mediocre performance into insane performance, I don't believe as much of such. And especially I'd never really believe finding a unprofitable strategy and then somehow being able to find a profitable version of it historically and then trying to take it live. So just understand that any strategy you're going to take out into the market or even just when backtesting is going to have some kind of con, and that's totally fine. It's just, are you fine with that particular con, and is there any way you can maybe de-risk that con ever so slightly? For me, most of the time, a really easy example is trend following systems are going to be amazing in a trend environment by their name, but they will suck for the most part in mean reversion or ranging markets, which is where primarily a lot of the drawdown and losses come from. You can add filters to potentially lower that or decrease size during those times if you can identify them properly. But the best solution I found is just adding a mean reversion strategy to that that is kind of uncorrelated as well. And then you can really be able to de-risk and negate the issues of each strategy. Now, obviously, it's not as simple as just putting 2 strategies together and boom, but overall time, you want to build a portfolio that can kind of achieve that. 5, developing a process to testing trading strategies is essential for success, as it enables you to filter out bad ideas and protect your capital from the hundreds of unprofitable ideas. This is pretty self explanatory as well. I think the main thing I would want to touch on here is focus on trying to get your backtesting as quick as possible while being thorough. Um, and the second half of that sentence is the most important. I have met a couple of people that have they do have the right intentions. Ideally, you want your backtesting to some extent to be as short as possible so you can test as many ideas and then get that out into live markets and then see how it performs continuously on like a forward test. However, doing that and rushing through the backtesting completely and forgetting about different techniques or not taking the time to do them, that's probably only going to hurt you. You're just going to probably have more bad ideas that actually gets out on the live market. And you never want the situation to happen where a bad idea works for a month on your forward test, and then you take it live because you're like, oh my god, it worked for a month, it looks great, and then it completely just loses money for the rest of the time. That has happened actually to me one time, so I do know it does exist. You can just get lucky within a month. Strategies, a lot of trading is a random distribution. You can get lucky. You really don't ever 100% know about that next trade or even about that sequence over a short period of time. And because it wasn't a high sample trading system, which means it wasn't taking tons and tons of trades, it was actually quite easy for it to just be profitable for a month and then you to assume, hey, it's profitable, let me take it live. So key thing as an overall takeaway for this point, keep it thorough, but try and get through as many backtests as possible by developing a very robust system that you can kind of go through, whether that be a checklist, whether that be you've already pre-written some code, things like that can really help along the way. 6, trading is often one of the slowest ways to get rich for the amount of effort, but it can be one of the fastest ways to compound. In fact, expecting to get rich quickly will only hold you back. Now, obviously, we all know, as Einstein said, compounding is one of the 8 wonders of the world. It really can compound wealth incredibly well. But I would say the people that get into trading thinking they're going to compound, $200, $500, $1,000, and you're going to compound that all the way up to 100K, million, and even more. It definitely isn't the easiest way or fastest way, at least in my opinion, to probably get there. While I still had that same ambition and same goal when I started trading, and I've continued at it. And yes, I've slowly had progress, but I definitely don't agree with the idea that, hey, come into trading with the approach that, hey, you're going to be able to compound this money by 5% a week and you're going to be able to grow it so fast, that really realistically just never happens in trading. I do really like the second part of this, that expecting to get rich quickly will only hold you back. This is something I found to be very true. The more I thought about long-term trading, long-term having my career as a trader, things like that, that has really just actually sped up my journey. I think someone has a beautiful quote like, patience is the quickest way to growth, or something like that. And I think that really holds true. There's something about it when you don't when you're not doing such a scarcity mindset to some extent of trying to get through trading and trying to just compound as fast as possible, you'll most likely like make less mistakes. When you're patient, you can take a step back, you can really view your options, you can really view how you want to approach it. I think that's normally the best way. And a biggest thing personally for me is patience is one of the best things for actually algorithmic trading as well, is that having that patience and letting your system ride out for 1 to 2, 3 months sounds really easy, and I can say it in 5 seconds. But to actually wait out 3 months of doing trades every single day, some trades are, someday you lose $500, $1,000, things like that. That takes mental fortitude to actually keep on doing. And if you don't have that patience and you're constantly trying to push your trading as fast as possible, that can be really damaging, and you can make really big slip ups, like I have previously. Now, I will say this isn't a blanket statement. I do know some traders like Lucas, the Short Bear, and a couple others that they were able to compound at incredible rates, absolutely insane rates. And still, when I look at it, I am completely mind blown by what they've been able to achieve. So yes, you maybe could be the outlier for it. That totally could be possible. I really wish I was the outlier for it, but keep in mind a realistic scope as well, for both ends, basically. 7. The best decisions I have made have always come from data and evidence. Don't rely on your gut. You're often wrong more than you remember. Now, obviously, this is like kind of survivorship bias to some extent, because you realistically don't always remember the decisions you're actually wrong on, and your brain actually, for some reason, does kind of put a nostalgia on some historical events in your life. So you can sometimes think you were winning more than you actually were, and things like that. But aside from that, I do really strongly believe with the first sentence. Even the traders I've met that have been incredibly talented in their discretionary trading, once they've added data to it, they've actually had exponential growth to some extent, because they've been able to confirm their thoughts, and that gives them the conviction to continue with size, continue with how they were executing and things like that, and not doubt themselves. Doubt can be a really dangerous thing in trading, and realistically, it is completely normal to have doubt in trading. We're all dealing with an uncertain game. The only kind of conviction that I personally find the easiest to believe in is my data. And if I know, hey, the strategy from all this test, I put in hours and hours into testing this, I really do believe that this is something that could hold weight. That can be what helps you hold conviction during those times. Now, obviously, you don't want it to sway your opinion so far that you don't understand when you have a losing strategy, but realistically, if you can back your decisions up with data and evidence, you'll find it the easiest way to have conviction in them, and to actually stay to execution, and to be able to size up on the strategy, which is ultimately the goal of every trader. I hope you enjoyed these 7 sentences, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.